Our last task in this module is arguably the most fun of all the tasks that we've got to work with here. And I call it the most fun because there are so many different ways in which you can't see into Active Directory, you can't see replication, that having access to some of the tools that are out there is really useful for whenever you're trying to figure out why something's not working. Here in this task on monitoring and managing replication, I want to give you just a nice little list of commands that you should keep at your disposal if you have that weird sense that something's not going right in Active Directory. These have to do with not only replication, but can also be useful for determining whether or not your Active Directory is healthy or not. Let's run through these commands just in a long list, and I'll explain what each one of these does. The first one is not a command. The first one I want to show you is back up here in Active Directory Sites and Services. And it's one little quick button that we missed back in a previous clip. Because in Sites and Services, there is the ability to initiate replication now, essentially to replicate now, through a single click. And if I come here to, let's see, I'm looking for a particular server. Let's say this server DEN, and I want to look at the NTDS settings there. You'll see that the KCC has generated the topology for this server, and then also the replication that's happening. So it's getting replication data from LAS DC1 and DEN DC2. If I want to initiate a replication, I can simply do so by right-clicking here and choosing to replicate now. That will actually go about and replicate the data on that connection. So again, something useful for you if you're just in Active Directory Sites and Services. Now, most of the time, however, I find myself not in Active Directory Sites and Services. In fact, I don't find myself in there much at all. And so for that reason, just using the available commands in the command line can be a little bit more useful than having to bring up Sites and Services and go through all those steps. Our old friend, the repadmin command, has a variety of different switches that go with it. If I take a look at the slash question mark, you'll see just a long list of things that I can do. One of the ones that I want to show you here is repadmin replicate, which does exactly what you would think. It replicates the contents of one domain controller's Active Directory to another. So DEN DC1 to LAS DC1. You do have to punch in here what part of Active Directory you want to replicate, like, for example, the entirety of it. So DC equals company, DC equals PRI. And that will synchronize the content from LAS to DEN. In fact, this is the target and this is the source in this case. So if you need to do a replication, you can use this as one tool in order to accomplish that. But you may be asking yourself, okay, Greg, well, how do I know what needs to be replicated? Another switch that's available with repadmin is repadmin show repl. The repadmin show repl will show you just information about the replication configuration that is associated with this machine. So here we're attaching to DEN-DC2. We can see that for that machine, we have a variety of different replications that have occurred. The last attempt in each case was successful. In a healthy environment, all of these will show as being successful. You want that to be the case. If you see anything that's problematic here, well, then you need to dig a little deeper to figure out why. Repadmin can also be used to initiate a recalculation of the knowledge consistency checker's inbound replication topography. Now, normally this happens, I think, every 15 minutes or so, but if I want to kick one off really quickly, I can do repadmin/kcc in order to accomplish that. So this is now going to recalculate that topography, and I don't have to wait for 15 minutes. Another nifty command, if I've got an RODC, I want to figure out which users have had their passwords brought down to an RODC. I can use repadmin to accomplish that as well. So repadmin PRP is the switch we're looking for here, and I want to view that against PHXDC1 with the reveal parameter to actually see which users are out there. Looks like in this case we've got the server PHXDC1, and there's our curb ticket granting ticket, and then the machine PHXDC1 as well. So there's a reveal list for that RODC. There's another location where we can check replication status as well, and it has nothing to do here with Windows PowerShell. It's actually in a very unexpected place under the GPMC, the Group Policy Management Console. If you take a look at the Group Policy Management Console, let me maximize it here. I want to show you that if I look here at a domain, here under company.pri, I can actually see the status of any of the domain replications that are existing in this environment. I can kick off that verification by choosing the Detect Now button, and that'll generate a report to let me know what the status of replication is. Now, we're not talking much about group policy here in this entire learning path, but you can't have group policy that's functioning if you don't have a correctly synchronizing Active Directory and sysvol. So this little tool here is useful to help you know if replication is in progress and indeed if replication is in sync. If you are having a problem with replication, one of the ways in which you can just do a diagnostics on your DFS replication is using the tool DFS Diag. DFS Diag has a whole bunch of switches to it as well. Each of these switches will kick off a particular test associated with DFS. One of the tests that you might take a look at is DFS Diag /test DCS. That runs a whole variety of tests against Active Directory to see whether or not you do indeed have a functioning DFS that's powering your Active Directory. Blue obviously is good, and red obviously is not in this case. While we're on the topic, one final command that I like to use, not so much for DFS health, but for ensuring whether or not I can even talk to Active Directory to see if DFS is functioning or not, is a command called nltest. nltest is used for determining whether or not you can locate a domain controller. And if I use the ds to get DC switch, I can point it at a domain to see if I'm actually talking with a domain controller on that domain, like company.pri. You can see here I've got a response, which means I do have a connection to company.pri. nltest actually has another switch called scquery, which will also further determine whether or not I have a secure channel to that location. So company.pri, and indeed, I do have a trusted connection to my domain controller. So it's just useful information here. I like to have a full quiver of these commands when I'm troubleshooting Active Directories that are just not working very well. There's one last little pro tip here that has to do with replication that I'm not entirely sure if is going to be on the exam or not, but can be handy if you just find yourself waiting around for all this site-to-site replication to occur. Remember when I told you that all the delays that are built into site-to-site replication, a lot of them have to do with very large distributed networks, and some of them are also artifacts of a time gone past. Well, because of those artifacts, we may want to just say, you know what, I would just prefer my site-to-site replication to happen at the same rate that my intra-site replication occurs. Meaning when something happens, if I go and disable an account, it will get disabled everywhere, almost instantaneously. There's a way in which we can accomplish that. Let me just show you over here first that in Sites and Services, if I take a look at a site link, it's impossible for me to actually dial down the minimum replication time in a site link past a certain value. So if I come here to IP and I look at the DEN LAS site link, the minimum replication time that I can set is something on the order of about 15 minutes. If that's not fast enough for you, there's a little hack that turns on what is called Active Directory change notification. Now, it's a hack because Microsoft kind of wants you to want to do this. And so you do actually have to kind of dig into Active Directory proper directly in the database in order to accomplish that. And the way you accomplish that is here in Active Directory in ADSI Edit. ADSI Edit is the tool you can use to horrifically destroy your Active Directory relatively quickly. So just be careful if you ever pop into here because there's just easy ways in order to break things here. I'm going to take a look at the configuration naming context, and I'm going to drop down here to my sites node, and I want to take a look here under sites at the intersite transports, and then the IP type transports, and then I want to view one of the properties of a particular site link object. Let's say that anytime any changes happen between the two different sites that are connected through this DEN-LAS site link, I want them to get updated immediately. I don't want to deal with this minimum 15 minutes silliness between these two connections because I've got a really fast network connection between these two sites. Well, the way in which I can fix that comes down here and looks at the attribute called options. And if I set the option from nothing, which is what it is now, to 1, you'll notice that it changes this to use notify. Use notify is essentially turning on Active Directory change notification, and now we'll begin to propagate changes to that remote site with the same frequency that they're propagated within the site. Again, I don't know if this is something that's part of the test, but it's just a neat little pro tip if you find yourself waiting around for things to happen between two sites that are really well connected.